Thanks for giving me the opportunity to do another presentation here. I got to try to figure out how I ended up here again, but that's all good. Looking at the crowd, I was kind of gearing this towards new wood turners. So I'm hoping we have somebody that wants to be a wood turner or is thinking about being a wood turner. Do we have that case here? Oh, good, great. So this will work well. All right, so let me pass this out. This is just kind of my overview for today. And I spent a little bit of time trying to decide exactly what to do for a demo, because I know you can, you see somebody get up here and just put a piece of wood on and turn it. And it seems like you need maybe just a little bit more than that. So I kind of geared this towards, how do you learn to be a wood turner? We all start out, and of course we have to pick some way to go learn. So one of the things that people do nowadays, of course, is YouTube. You've got YouTube, you can go out there and see everything. So as you're watching YouTube, you've taken in quite a bit into your brain. You're taking it in. And I think eventually you think, well, I could do that. And sure enough, you can do it, but you need to develop your own muscle memory to do it yourself. So then you have to take those projects that you see out there and actually, go home and do that project 1 time, 2 times, 20 times. And then, of course, by doing that, you build your own muscle memory to where you're actually doing it instead of just watching somebody else do it on YouTube. So one thing there. Another good thing to do, of course, if you're new wood turning, is to join clubs that you can. In this area, we have GAW and AWG, even Barnesville. You can join Barnesville. Now, maybe you don't want to drive down there for the meetings, but they do Zoom. So you can log in and get their Zoom meeting. And by watching their meeting remotely, I've picked up a few things. And the laser I'm going to show later today actually came from watching somebody at Barnesville use that particular laser. So you pick up things from everywhere. So join what you can, join the clubs, take part in the clubs. That's one of the better ways to learn. Because everything that I've learned over the last 3 years has been from all of you, has been from this team here. I pick up a little piece from one meeting, from another meeting, from taking a hot class, everything. It's just, trying to absorb as much as possible over the last 3 years. So hopefully I represent it well here, but you just keep absorbing the data, and then you reshare that data where you can. So sign up to be the next demoer. All right, so the hot classes, you can also do private instructions if you find somebody. There are people, paid instructions if you want to do that as well. But practice, but spend as much time as you can in front of the lathe once you get a lathe. The next page that I put there that you have, this is kind of the shorthand for turning this project. And if you give this to a turner, they could quickly go down this and pretty well understand most of it. It's just quick things of what you would do to turn, and then they could turn it. But not everybody, is a turner that's been around for 5, 10, 15 years, where you could just say, hey, I'm going to go turn this project and go throw it on the lathe and turn it. So I kind of geared today's thing to kind of where the next page is the decisions of a wood turner. And I tried to come up with as many decisions that a wood turner has to make, from the simplest thing, or actually I tried to put everything on here as a question. And I think if you can go through and answer these questions even before you start a project, you may be like, yep, I know the answer to 1 through 20. I've got the answer. Oh, wait a minute, number 21, I'm not sure how I would do that. So that's where then you can take and ask your friends or ask other club members, hey, when I get to this step, how do I do that? So these are just kind of the things to think about, as you're starting a project. And I think just part of the learning process is sometimes you need to know what the question is. You may not know what the question is, but if you can kind of know what the question is and even have a list of the questions, maybe that'll help you. So hopefully this data here, will be helpful. So I kind of got into these chips and dip bowls here. Marcus, a club member here, was the one that brought this up. And sometimes somebody will mention something and you may think, well, that doesn't interest me necessarily. And I think that was my first thing when he first said chips and dip bowl. I'm like, okay, But then after I thought about it, and after he hosted a class and asked me to, take part in that class, you realize that every project, whether you think you may ever use it, you learn something from doing that project. It gives you an opportunity to do something that you hadn't did before. You see something you hadn't did before. You just have the opportunity to learn. So it's like the hot classes, they give a lot of hot classes, and you may look at the topic and think, oh, I don't want to do that one, but you really should. You should take the hot class anyway, because you will get something out of it. It gives you the opportunity. So that's the last one I did. I did this as kind of the practice to refresh my memory last week. Some of these other ones here, when Marcus first told me about it, this was the first one I did. I just threw a piece of wood on the lathe, turned it. So that was the very first one. I then came back and I had an oak tree that had been cut down in my yard. So I came back and did a couple more. This one here, I left a larger rim on the outside. As I was turning it, I turned that, and then I decided to leave it for no particular reason. Just, hey, I left it as part of the design. The next one I turned, I went back to a smaller side with the inner bowl. And the inner bowl, you've got options. You've probably saw the insert with Bob's. These are little bowls bought at a dollar store, so you can make it so that can fit in there. And of course, you have to decide if you want a flat bottom or if you want to do a curved bottom. People will always critique your work, so somebody says, oh, you shouldn't do a flat bottom. Okay. But you can, you're the one turning it, so you can turn it and make it fit, the way that you want it to fit in there. So, but that was another one. And then in the class that we did take, this was the one that I turned in class. So a slightly different design on that one as well. There's no formula for this. It's like everything else we turn. It's whatever the turner decides for it to be. That's what it is at the end of the day. So you just turn these however you want. This one ended up being higher. I used a thicker piece of wood. I think my intention at the time was it was probably going to be shorter. But then as I started, I'm like, okay, I think I'll just leave it and see what that turns into. And the wife said she liked it better than the other one. So, and this was one I actually did in a platter class. And this one, for whatever reason, the day that I was cleaning up the foot here, or the tenon on this one, I just decided to leave that. So this really wasn't anything to do with this project, but in some ways, it works just as well. So you have options on what you can do. There is no magic formula. So, any questions?
What's the diameter? What are those?
These are about 8 inches here. Those are 8. I think this was 8.5. This one looks like maybe about 10, and this one was probably 11 or so. So
those could be done on a MIDI?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, so you've got options. I mean, you could even make a bigger one if you wanted to. So this, going through these 47 questions, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the particular, all 47 of them. But of course, if you're new to wood turning and you're going to set up your shop, number one on that list is safety. You should think about that safety first. That's eye protection, face shield, breathing protection, and I consider lighting as part of safety too, because it really pays to be able to see what you're working on. So I just kind of lump that into safety. All right, so the second thing is how are you going to learn? You take classes. We talked about that already. Third thing on here, you're new. You've got to decide to go get a lathe. So I just listed out, the 3 different general sizes of the lathe, and maybe you want to wait and buy your lathe after you've taken some classes and you've had the opportunity and you've went to a few club meetings and you've talked to members. You may even find a good used one at a good price compared to a brand new one. But they do have nice ones out here, so please shop. What tools do you need? You'll get a collection of tools over time. You don't have to go out there and buy a complete set. One of the wiser things is, maybe you're buying one at a time, even on the used market. So once again, talking to club members, seeing what they have available, maybe they have something to sell. So you can always just pick up, you need a gouge, you buy a gouge. You need a parting tool, you get a parting tool. Don't fall into the trap of buying a complete set for some reason, because there may be ones you never use. talk about some chucks on here. There's plenty of chucks to choose from out there on the market, a variety of price ranges, of course. So today, we're going to make some of these decisions together. So, well, one of them, we've decided to turn a chips and dip bowl, so you can't make that decision, but the next decision is, let's decide what size it's going to be. Of course, I kind of hemmed in on that one too, because it's going to be this size or this size. So, do you guys have a preference? Would you like to see this piece of, I think it's fogwood, right now at this point, or this piece here? Glenn, this is some of the stuff that you said is possibly box elder. So, you stick with that? All right, so foxwood or box elder? Box elder, all right. And that's what this one is here. That's made out of that same wood. All right, so then, of course, we have to, decide on some of the way we want this to look. So do you have a preference? Which style should we try to target? You want to? With the high edge?
Yeah.
Any,
You have to take into consideration the
I do have a defect.
on the
Yeah.
defect.
Yeah, there is a defect on this one. So do you stick with your decision, or would you like to change it?
You can change it anytime. Yeah, that does go way down here.
Yeah, for part of this design, I was planning on that disappearing, because there is that defect there, so.
Go with that one over there. How about that?
This one? Everybody want to see something like this?
Somebody's gonna have to clean up this mess.
You always decide beforehand, or sometimes you decide on the fly based upon
I
what
just,
you run into and
yes, a lot of that I decide on the fly. Yeah, and we'll actually get into this piece of wood. You can also notice this piece of wood has wormholes in it, and that's going to make a lot of decision too. This may end up being a 4-inch bowl instead of an 8-inch bowl. Because I ran into that on this one over here, and I finally just stopped because I chased a couple of wormholes on this one. And I ended up, there's actually still some wormholes here, but I just decided that they were going to be part of it. Because if I chased those last wormholes away, there was going to be no more bowl. The other option with those wormholes is to epoxy them. But as soon as you decide I'm going to fill that with epoxy, you just changed your timeline on finishing that particular project. Because you've got to epoxy it, you've got to wait, you've got to go back and turn it. So it changes everything. So every decision you make, it makes a difference. So wormholes, that's one of the decisions in here also, is you kind of prepare yourself ahead of time. How are you going to deal with cracks in the wood? How are you going to deal with wormholes? What are you going to do? Are you going to chase them down for cracks? Some are small enough that maybe CA glue will take care of it. Other professional turners, I think that they don't even bother picking up a piece of wood if it's got cracks in it, because of course they're trying to sell the piece and they just can't be bothered. So for us hobbyists, I think you have that option.
Tony, is there any wood you should avoid because of having to be food grade?
That's probably true. I don't know what they are, but yeah, most likely that could be, unless you were going to coat it with CA glue or something and put that plastic finish on it. But yeah, I'd have to research the safety on that. But yeah,
Like on these ones that have the built-in bowl that you don't necessarily plan to put the dish in, you feel it's safe to put dip into typically? Or
I've probably never planned to use these personally, but yeah, if somebody was getting it and they actually wanted to put salsa or something in the bowl itself, I would probably recommend the CA glue to seal it. But yeah, so that was some of the other decisions here. And as you get started too, it's you need to. It probably pays ahead of time to have your sandpaper ready. Of course, all of us would like to not to use sandpaper, but unfortunately for me, it's a tool. It's the tool that I go to after I finish turning. This is the next tool. So your sandpaper, are you going to go from 180 to 600? Are you going to go from 80 to 400? What is your grit range? Do you have it available? Because once you start turning this and decide it's time to sand, be prepared. Have your supplies ready. You decide to do this project, so where are you going to get the wood from? Or do you already have a stock of wood? I think most of us are, collecting wood. Or are you going to have to go buy the wood? And if you see the prices when you go buy a chunk of wood, it's like, whoa. Or are you going to find it on the road? So you got to decide where are you going to get that wood from. You also have to decide, this came in as a log, so you have to decide, well, how are you going to prep that? If you bring home a big log from a raffle, well, do you have a chainsaw? Because you may need a chainsaw. Or do you have an 18-inch bandsaw that you could just run this through the bandsaw? So there's decisions there to make as you're picking a project and picking your wood supply. There's decisions, and that's the questions to kind of ask yourself as you're working through this. Next major thing, of course, is how are you going to mount this on the lathe? You can start between centers so that you can, build your foot or tenon on the one side. My preferred method lately is the worm screw. It's just a quick and easy, so we're going to go with the worm screw today.
Do you draw a rough picture on the raw wood to begin with, just to get an idea of what you think it might look like?
I don't currently. I did put that in the thing here to actually, when you get it mounted up, that you may want to go ahead. You're of course going to have to mark it for the tenon, and then you may want to go ahead and mark your edges. If you decide that that's where the edge is going to be, then go ahead and make a line there for the edge, and then you could make your lines for the inner and outer bowl. Once you flip it back around, you could draw your lines there on it so you can kind of visualize it as you're turning it. So for this particular blank, I think everybody realizes now that it does have an inclusion here on the side. So that's pretty well telling me that we're going to need to get rid of this piece here. So I plan to turn that away and hopefully not throw it at anybody. But I plan to turn this away. Well, if I'm turning this away, that helps me make a decision. This is going to be my top. Now you may, if you didn't have this problem, you could look at this piece of wood and you could look at the grain, and you could make a decision. Well, is this going to be the top? Is this going to be the top? You can look, you can do whatever, but this one's going to help us make that decision. So we'll go ahead and make this the top. So if that's going to be the top, that means this will be the bottom. Since this is a top, and I know that we've got this bowl here, then I know that I can go ahead and drill my worm screw on this side. So that fits perfect. I'll make this my top. We'll put the worm screw here, so that'll work. You also have to, at that same point of deciding that, for that worm screw, this is a pretty chunky blank, so I don't have to worry too much about the length, but I do need to, pay attention to, I don't want to go through the bottom of this inner bowl before I've even created it. So I really want to just, go in a half an inch or so, get a good enough bite on it, but you want to take that into consideration. So we'll do that. Which means, so this is going to be the top, and this out here, this will be the outer edge of the lower one, and then the mass of this will be going away.
You got another thing on the edge on there, right?
Yep.
You have to take that.
Yep, that's going to have to come off as well.
You can make that into a lid for a curve, right?
Possibly the curve, but there's a lot of wormholes right here. So as we start to curve that, we're going to get rid of that. We're going to do a little bit of rounding, which is going to bring some of that down, but we're going to run into some wormholes pretty quick here, which was kind of the sister to that other piece. So
when you put it on the worm screw, you're saying you're only going to do about a half inch. Is that really sufficient? Or are you going to use the tail stop to?
Yeah, we'll bring the tail stop up.
Compensate for that?
Yeah, we'll bring that up also. Anytime you possibly can bring up your tail stock, go ahead and do it. And actually that brings up another good point. That other one I was turning it Sunday, and I threw it off the lathe. And the reason it came off the lathe is my tenon, I got a little chintzy with my tenon. And that's the piece that was left on the lathe. The bowl was laying out behind me. So you can see I got chintzy. I didn't make my tenon as thick as it should have been. And the first time I took a bite, I did not have my tailstock up. I just told you use the tailstock. I didn't have my tailstock up. It caught and it threw it off the lathe.
So Tony, what I just learned is I'm sitting in the wrong seat.
Now we'll be okay today. I'll do a better tenon today.
So another question backing up a little bit. Obviously we have this piece with the grain in its current orientation. We can't change that.
Right.
How do you choose the orientation of the grain?
If you had to,
If you're starting fresh. I mean, would you use whatever you have, or if you have choice, you want the grain this way, you want it that way,
What I've heard on that is it's really personal opinion. Some people may think that you take this and run it the same direction of the bowl. Other people say you do it just the opposite. So it's really, it's that final product. They're going to look different depending on how that grain runs. So I think, the best you could do to that, luckily maybe you've got 2 or 3, you can turn one way, turn one the other way, and then look at the final product and think, oh, well, that grain actually looked better going the opposite direction. Now
you learn it and figure it out.
I think, wood turning is a lot of, doing it, seeing it, and then seeing the final product.
No formula.
There is no magic formula. I haven't found one.
When the tenon broke off, was that kind of early in the process, so there was a lot of mass?
Yes. Yeah, there was still a lot. And it tore off, and I was kind of in a mood, and I thought, well, I'm just done for the day. But I decided, nope, I'm not done for the day. I'm going to pick it up, put it back on, and continue. So, you couldn't let that little defeat, that embarrassing thing defeat you. You just got to, hey, I'm going to get it back on the lathe. I'm going to bring up the tailstock. I'm going to make a better tenon next time. So, it's that process of learning. Some people say they've never thrown one off the lathe. Well, I can't say that. So I think you're probably ready to see this thing on the lathe because I've been talking for way too long here. So let's get it on the lathe. And that's kind of the next 3 major decisions here is, you're going to mount this thing one time to actually put it on the lathe. We're going to get us a foot. Then there's going to be the second mounting. When it's mounted this way, we're going to get the tenon made. And we're going to form our bottom, and we're going to form the foot, be this way. And we're going to form the bottom, form the foot, and get as much of that as we can while it's mounted that way. Then the second mounting is going to be, we're going to put it on that tenon on the lathe. So then we have access to go ahead and turn the inner bowl. We have access to, start the outer bowl, the inner side of the outer bowl, and then blend those 2 bowls together at that point. Once we get done with that, then we've got to actually mount it one more time where we're going to have to turn it back around because then we need to get rid of that tenon. We got to get rid of the tenon. We got to, get rid of it or make it part of the bottom. You have options there, possibly how you want to blend it in, but you have to, it's the 3rd time. So that's good to think of ahead of time is, are you aware that you're going to be doing this 3 times and how are you going to do it? Because when I first started, I loved doing steps 1 and 2. When they got to taking that foot off, it's like, I don't want to do that because I try to put it in the Longsworth chuck or the cold jaws, and those don't work so well for me. They just don't hold that well. So it's like, that foot, that's a problem. But now I've seen people do the jam chuck to take the foot off, and it works. It's really good. So we're going to show that today. So of course, to center this, it's already a circle. We've decided that this is going to be the top, which is where we're going to mount it first. I brought one of my templates. I made up a template for all sizes because what I also use these for is, take some nail or a pin or something, and when this is an actual blank, you just take and nail that right there, and you go over to your bandsaw, and then you just cut. I usually stay about a 1/2 inch away from here and just use that as a circle, and that's how I get a circle, pretty close to whatever size I want. All right, so we'll get our center marked. There's our hole. So over here we have the center marked, of course, and I'm just going to go in about a 1/2 inch. I've got a mark here on my drill, but we'll just kind of, knowing that I have plenty of extra, I'm just going to that probably is plenty in there. A little more for extra. And if you were at my last demo, you saw that I just about took off my thumb because I tried to get smart like the people on YouTube and have this thing turning and put this on there. It's not safe. So a little bit of wax on here is good. Also, this worm screw, of course, is too long. I don't want to go in that deep, so I have a spacer. And for this case here, it's a 3/4 inch spacer. Let me just double check and make sure I also got that worm screw tight. So I'm going to put some wax on here because getting this back off can be challenging sometimes. And yes.
If you didn't care that the screw went in further, would you still use a spacer to get more area, or would you just let it go up against the jaws? Does it matter, I guess?
I think it would depend on the size of wood that you were doing. I think with this size, I think having this extra surface here is better, because if not, then you've got less surface, so this would be more surface there. My opinion.
More stability on the
Yeah, kind of gives it a little more grip. That, you know, that friction there is just good grip to have, in my opinion. So,
Better than my opinion.
we all learn together. And we're going to get this thing started. Does this thing have a lock? Yeah, I guess maybe that's it right there. All right. Do this with power off. And remember how much you tighten it, you got to take this thing back off later. So you want it on there secure, but you do get to take it back off. So
it won't be a big block later, so you don't have as much to grab on.
exactly. For those smaller bowls I actually had to get an oil change wrench to get to some of those to get them back off there, to take them back off.
Strap wrenches are great.
All right, so we know what our top is. We know this is going to be the bottom. We know we're going to bring up our tailstock. We also know that we need to mark for our chuck. Now, I used to always do this problem here. It's like, oh, I need to measure to know what my tenon needs to be. Well, wait a minute, my tenon's over here that I'd want to measure, my chuck. Well, when you realize it finally, this chuck's never changing size. So I know it's the 50 millimeter, so I know I just need to make more than 50 millimeter. I don't like to do 50 and try to get it exactly perfect. So I give myself a little bit of room because I don't want to make it too small. But I was always thinking, well, I need to measure that, you know, anyway. So I found, or actually I didn't find it, saw it in some class, somebody did it, probably Glenn. You know, the easy way to mark this if you have one of these one-way styles is if you hold this pencil right here, and I use the carpenter pencil, if you hold that right there, you get a pretty good 50 millimeter, you know, or get a good 50 millimeter circle that you can go ahead and turn. But I even give myself a little extra, I stand it up, just to get that little extra there. So we can see that that's going to be the tenon. Oh good, we got a wormhole right in the edge of it, so that could be interesting. And we also may want to, you know, kind of face this off just a little bit before we do that, but we'll go ahead and do that there. And safety glasses, these are prescription, give me a little bit better sight. Zenni Opticals, you can get prescription, they're good glasses. And of course the face shield also helps. So let's go ahead and so then a bowl gouge is a good thing to start with here. And I think just to go ahead and get us a somewhat of a flat surface here to work with, I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit off here. That's a Carter and Son.
Here somewhere. There we go.
I wouldn't recommend going out and buying these right away unless you decide you're really going to turn for a long time. You may want to just go with a different set to get started. And like I said, if you get light on your subject here, it's a lot safer for you.
Where'd you find that light?
Harbor Freight.
Harbor Freight?
Yeah, they had these. And if your lathe is shaking, you need to turn down your speed some. one extra one just for Buzz. All right, so that gives us a nice clean surface to look at. And of course it got rid of my line there, so let's go back and put that back in. So we know what we're targeting. I'm going to switch over to a Badan to actually start to build that foot or the tenon. And I left a little extra just to be on the safe side. And since we have that wormhole right there in the tenon, I think I'm going to go ahead and just see if we can chase that wormhole away. Well, actually, we'll just make the tenon a little bit larger, a little deeper. And since my jaws are dovetail, I need to put a little bit of a dovetail on here. All right, so that'll give us a way to grab it. And now we need to switch and go ahead and start thinking about, start to round this over and see what we have.
Just a couple of questions.
Yep, absolutely.
One of which is, any particular reason you didn't do the outside first?
To true it up?
Yeah, just because it seems like it would,
You,
you were asking before, yeah, we have better balance.
you can, yeah, you could always do that. But about the only reason I didn't is I realized when I start doing this, I'm going to start taking some away. And eventually I'm just going to waste all that away. So you could take the time to go ahead and true it up, or you can waste it away later. That is just an option that you do have.
So for instance, in that one, since it's fairly round, it made sense to do what you were doing, but if it was more out of round, maybe.
Yeah, if it was completely out of round and whatever, you may want to go ahead, and you may want to go ahead and do that as well. It's not a bad idea to go ahead and do that to kind of see what your dimension is and then start. So it's your choice at the time. Yeah.
Next question. When you cut the tenon, I was expecting you to go all the way to the edge to cut off the material.
That's what I used to do, but I kind of have this style now that I like to not go all the way to the edge because I build my foot and I keep this high as possible because this is actually going to be my foot. So if you go all the way to the edge and then you want to leave a foot like this, then you give up that much more material. So I just go ahead and leave this material, make it the foot.
Cut away
Right.
what you want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It does change one thing later for you, because then when you go to take off this tenon, your tenon is a little bit recessed. So then if you needed to cut it off with a saw or something, it's more difficult because it's more recessed. So every decision comes with something else down the road for you.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah. So now let's go ahead and start on the outside. And that first bowl gouge was a little larger, so I'm just going to switch to first one was 5/8. I'm just going to drop down to 1/2 inch bowl gouge. Just always check, make sure you're clear because you've moved it. But let's start to see what this edge is going to look like. Let's see what we have. And of course, it helps to get your light back on it. Yeah, so we do have a ways to go.
About how fast, how many RPMs?
And let me see what that one was. That's right at about 1,000, but it's really bouncing here. I would be faster at home, but yeah, it's whatever. The speed is what you're comfortable with in your lathe, and that's what I'm trying to keep it a little bit lower just because of the bouncing. Also notice that I'm trying to do the woodturner's dance. I'm not the best at it, but of course you want to lock your tools against your body and move your body instead of moving your arms. I think everybody's heard it, and for me it's taken a while to actually put it into implementation. Oh yeah, those are bad. Can you guys see how bad those wormholes are? They're going to be part of the design, I think. But I will go ahead and take off a little bit more here. Oh yeah. You can probably see those from way back there, can't you? Ooh. All right. Buzz, did you choose this piece of wood?
Yeah.
They look like great drainage holes.
Yeah, they will be. And see, if I chase them, if I get rid of those, we're going to go that much smaller. So for this demo, since nobody's buying this piece, we're going to just leave them and say we're going to epoxy them. All right, so that's it. It could end up being a little bit smaller as we go, but let's go with that for now. I do have a surprise crack showed up too, so that's a chance where you either decide that's bad enough that you would just, I'm done with this piece, or you decide, hey, I'm going to put a little super glue in there because of the size of the crack. But let's just go with that one. So now I want to come back over here and start thinking about, you know, the combination of my foot and how I want to leave this. So let's do a little design here on the fly. Stop for a second, take a look. So the cut's not too bad, yeah, but those wormholes are just terrible. Who thinks we can get rid of them? Who wants to chase them away?
You can go shallower and you get some of them out.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's just too many there to really look at here, so. Well, except for the fact that we've also got to deal with this other side here. But let's take out a few of them. Oh, okay. And there's the problem you run into. You think you're going to get some of them out, and you run into worse ones. So this demo today is going to be, you know, not with the best piece of wood by any means.
Improved piece
It was.
First wood tends to be the prettiest.
All right, so let's go back and work on that foot again that I just eliminated. So this one's already feeling like it's going to be a different design than I did before, which is what always happens. All right, so gotta have some nice wormhole. Oh wow, look at that one. Okay, yeah, this is terrible.
Just ignore that.
What's that?
Just ignore that.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go as far as we can on this one. So I think you get the gist of it though. You got your tenon. You're gonna build some type of a foot. Just go back and do that. How much sanding are you guys up for? I hit this with a little bit of, if it gets to be too much, holler. All right, so for that you do, you're sanding the course. You would sand until you get rid of your lines at whatever grit you're at, and then you go ahead and move up through your grits until you have, what you're looking for. So let's do a few of those actually. Just so I started with the 120. Hit it with the 180, and that's not going to be perfect sanding. So let's call it on that. And let me clean up for the tenon a little bit. I kind of got in there and need to make sure you have a nice flat surface for the chuck to go against. All right, so good flat surface. Not the best design given the wormholes, but I think we'll call it on that one for being able to flip this around.
Wait, you were just using a skew to do that?
Yeah, just to clean up that inside there.
I noticed you came this way into it. And again, any reason as opposed to going from the side?
You could go from the side, but I was just kind of matching the my dovetail here. Just kind of sticking with the dovetail and going back in. But yeah,
that could also clean up the bottom.
Yes. Yeah, if you did a better cut across there, yeah, that actually scraping like that is not the best way to do that going in. But we're also going to sand that away later. But yeah, there's better ways. Glenn, how would you actually cut back into that, or?
Do it just like you did.
It would work, okay.